Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And today, we're gonna be scary-ish.
So today we're going to be covering, for the first time, I think ever.
It's definitely the first time ever.
We're going to be covering a single topic. We think it's really interesting. There is a lot of meat on this bone to chew. I think I mixed two metaphors and they both sounded sexy together. But I'm actually really excited about this episode, so I don't know how excited you are, but I'm pretty jacked up.
I think one of my topics is gonna be like the typical, scary-ish true crime type thing. And then the second part is going to be more of the ish. That's more like, this is really, to me, really, really, really interesting. And something that I don't think a lot of people know about. And so
I think you're really underselling your second part, because I think that's definitely scary. So we'll let folks decide, though. I will say, don't want to build this whole thing up too much, so let's do the thing where we talk about what we did between episodes.
Okay.
We watched Malignant, which is a new horror movie that was just released. I think James Wan is the director of it. And I was expecting something scary, and then I read a review online. They gave it a 5 out of 10. They didn't like it. And when I read that, I was like, okay, lower your expectations. It's probably not going to be the movie you think it is. And it honestly reminded me of Darkness Falls a little bit. It had that feel to it, where it goes from a premise that's kind of thin to a twist that's kind of obvious to like totally off the fucking rails at the end. And I was just like, I don't hate it. I really don't. But it's definitely not what I thought it was going to be.
I don't think it was as bad as a 5 out of 10.
I would give it a solid 5.1 out of 10.
Like, it was just... It was kind of creepy because things that don't move the right way for me kind of freak me out. Like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? The creature doesn't move like a person would move, so it kind of freaked me out.
That's true. I agree with that. There's just certain things about the twist where you're like, wait, now that makes no sense.
Right, but do you really expect a horror movie to make sense all the time?
It's more terrifying for me if it does. So when the twist happened, I was like, I feel like they had the idea for the twist and they built the movie around it. So the first half of the movie for me, I actually really enjoyed. I thought it was doing really well. I thought it was like solid horror. I was like, this is fucking creepy. And then when the twist happens, you kind of expect it. We were like kind of guessing what was going to happen, and we were right. When it finally hit, I was just like, yeah, I'm not happy that I like could see this coming, because I'm not actually happy with how this is going to go now.
Okay. So
it wasn't bad. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it was like, it's kind of funny because today when I got to work and I had my first meeting, got to work digitally or whatever, the first person that jumped in our scrum, which is usually like 10 people, was like, so this past weekend, one of their team members said we should all watch Malignant over the weekend and then talk to each other about what we think of it. So we both had like the same take on it. Like the first half was good, and then what the fuck? So I had a lot of people to talk to about it today and just break it down. And my chat with the person who inspired that team, it was David, who was like, hey, we should all just watch this. I told him, hey, I watched Malignant this weekend too. And then it was like 40 messages back and forth like, can you believe this happened? And then me being like, can you believe this happened? And we just broke down the whole plot. And then we were done doing that. We're like, yeah, but I kind of liked it. So it's kind of hard to describe. I would say if you're interested in seeing it, go see it. Just understand it's probably not like,
if you have HBO,
yeah, it's there.
Just
it's there for you to watch.
It's
not like super dramatic horror. It's a different type of a thing. Read a review or two on it, maybe that's spoiler free, to get your mind right before you do it, or just listen to what we just said. And,
you're welcome.
But yeah, that's like the biggest thing I
think
we
did. My
review,
review, 6 out of 10.
My review, 5.1 out of 10.
Really?
So yeah,
dang, that's a rough score.
But I don't know. I'm kind of harsh when it comes to rating stuff. So. But it is what it is. I enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, let us know. I'd love to hear what other folks had to say on Malignant. So that's the main thing that we did over the weekend. We had like other stuff too, but none of y'all care about that. It's like we went to Costco. We went to Smith. We bought some stuff. We got
did
some
adulting.
Water. Yeah, we did some chores and stuff like that. We played some BioShock on the live stream.
Oh yeah, we did.
And I think we're like right at the end. We're super close to the end of that game.
There's still like two levels that we haven't gotten to
I think we might have one left. I think that was where we're ending. We're right at the spot where we're going to move to like the second to last, and then we'll get to the last one. But if you don't know, we actually play video games on Saturdays most of the time. And we're currently playing the first BioShock. We've both never played it before. And it's pretty awesome. We've really enjoyed it. So we usually play from like noon Pacific time till 3 p.m. Gives us a solid 3 hours to get through. The thing that has slowed us down with BioShock is that our version tends to crash And if we haven't saved recently, we lose a lot of progress. We've lost at least 3 hours worth of progress through crashing. So it's a pain in the butt, but hey, it is what it is. All right. So we've done that. And I did that because you guys are, you see the new episode of Scaryish pop up. It has a title. You already know what you're going to get. So I don't need to build it up too much, but I will say for this week, we decided to take a suggestion from one of our patrons on a topic that sounded really interesting. And after talking about who would cover it, because I said, are you going to be mad at me if I cover it? Do you want to cover it? And Robin said, I don't know. And we kind of just decided, maybe we can just both cover it since it's this fairly broad topic and there seems to be a lot to do. So that's what we're doing. I don't know if we've covered the same topic before. I don't think we have. I think we've tried to keep topics similar to each other.
We've tried to keep themes.
Like we did.
Cursed objects.
Yeah.
Things
and
that.
We did I think episode 0 was reincarnation and something else.
I don't know.
Sleepwalking. Those aren't anywhere near each other.
They aren't near each other.
We had the idea before in the past, let's keep our topics related, and we're it's too hard. Just no, we're not going to do that. But anyways, I think we've been Eskimo brothers on topics before, but never directly tag teamed the same topic. So that's what we're doing this time. That said, this topic comes from 911 Girl. So shout out to you. Thank you so much for suggesting this. And we are going to be talking about
Strange Google Earth.
Strange Google Earth. So that's what we have in store for you this episode. And I think I'm going first, unless you want to go first. It's up to you.
You can go first. You have a menagerie of things that you've covered.
I think I have 4 or 5 things that I'm going to go over. None of them as in depth as the things Robin will cover. So okay, cool. I'll jump into mine. I did just read my intro, so that makes sense.
Stupid idiot.
So Strange Google Earth as a topic is going to cover a couple of things. One is bizarre stuff that has been seen since the advent of Google Earth. I don't think a lot of folks out there are disillusioned about Google Earth being around forever, but it's kind of weird for me because as I write my topic, I usually have something on in the background. And today I've had Vanity Fair interviews where they're interviewing celebrities and they do a timeline of their career. And as they do timelines of their career, it's kind of funny to hear all the things that didn't used to exist. So I saw one of them talking to Tony Hawk, the pro skater. Mm-hmm. And he said that he has been skateboarding since basically skateboards came out. And I'm just that's so fucking funny.
Skateboards haven't always existed?
Exactly. And he was just saying, I think he actually said it was about snowboarding. He's been snowboarding since snowboarding came out. Since snowboarding, the first snowboard was created, he was snowboarding.
Okay.
And so many of them have that. I saw Paul McCartney going over just the most commonly asked questions, and someone asked him if they use a click track, and he's like, they didn't exist, so no. And there's just so many things that I just don't realize being a 36-year-old human being that folks don't understand might not have existed, like Google Earth. Before, when I was a kid, we used to actually have a map that you have to use to travel.
Literally, I wrote about that because I remember when GPS was really limited, and if you wanted a GPS unit,
they were super expensive.
They were super duper expensive, and they were really limited. And it's when there's new construction and stuff, it doesn't auto update. You're fucked. Yeah, you had to have. I remember when you had to have maps, you had to have literal maps in your car.
You had to have and this is the thing that was so important. My dad gave this to me when I first got my car, an atlas. And it was a country. It was a map of the country and all the roads, and then A to Z of all the states. So once you're in a state, you can see, because so many folks live in one state. When you cross a border, you're like, oh shit, I need to stop at a gas station and buy a new map. That is something that no one has to deal with now. I remember my first trip with MapQuest directions.
Yeah, you had to print out your MapQuest directions.
It was from Chicago to Florida. So it's a 20-hour drive. And at some point, it just decided to take us north instead of south for 600 miles, which is quite a detour just to have us turn around again and go south. And I realized it, and I was like, these directions are dumb. So when we got into Georgia, I literally threw the directions out the window. And it's got out the atlas. I'm like, this is how we're going to get there because these directions are stupid and there's no way it's going to work. And you just don't have to deal with that shit now. So y'all are lucky. Just saying.
And it didn't use GPS units too. They didn't automatically tell you in, whatever amount of feet, turn here.
Oh yeah.
You had to press the button for it to speak.
TomTom was the first one I think that spoke.
I think when I was growing up, we had Garmin. That's the one we bought. We couldn't afford a TomTom because TomToms were the fancy ass ones.
My friend had a TomTom and he borrowed it from his dad so that we could go to a job. We were doing freelance photography on the west side of Chicago. So it was like 2.5 hours away on a good day. And we drove back in a snowstorm. And it took us like 6.5 hours to get home. And there was no one else on the freeway because it was so bad. The plows were getting stuck. And the car was fishtailing the whole time. And I was like, does TomTom tell us if roads are closed? And my friend was just like, TomTom is scared. Because like, you're fucked, man. You don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, God.
So,
yeah, we didn't, like, everyone now has Google Maps in their pocket,
Yeah.
right? Everyone has GPS in their pocket. So it's just so interesting to me how much technology has changed. And now Google Earth exists where you can literally drop that little pin onto the road.
you just drag the little dude and drop him.
Yeah, and you can click around and see, like, oh, the shop is right there. I just have to turn. You know what I mean?
It's one of my
like,
favorite things
crazy.
to do in my free time because when you drag him onto the map, he dangles like Roller Coaster Tycoon. And I'm just like, oh my God, I used to play that game so much. We're not going to get too far off topic here. So one of the things we're going to cover in this topic is bizarre stuff that has been seen since the advent of Google Earth. The other thing that we'll cover are some of the crimes that have either been caught on camera or solved because of Google Earth. So,
Not necessarily crimes, but like disappearances and things like that.
for me, I have a crime that was literally caught on camera.
Okay.
So I'll get into that. Robin has some other stuff too. But we're going to mix it up. I'll do my stuff. Robin will do her stuff. And I'm pretty excited about it. So I was afraid that it was going to be such a short episode, but I think we're going to be okay. So the first one I'm bringing to the table is kind of a random factoid, actually, because when I was searching through a bunch of lists, I kept running into like the same thing over and over again. And upon searching the weirdest, wildest, crazy things Google Maps has to offer, there's kind of two pieces to that. One is the fact that you have an overhead map, so you can see all the roads, and if you zoom in, you can see certain things like from the aerial satellite view. The other is the fact that you can drag the little guy onto the road and you can see the street view. And the street view things are kind of crazy. Also, I would love to be the dude who drives around in the Google car with the 360 camera on the roof. Because you're just like driving all day, listening to fucking podcasts. And as long as the camera's working, you're just like, okay, cool. Like, just follow this route and you'll be fine. But one of the things you might have to do when you're doing that job is drive in, let's say, not so good areas. So one of the first things I saw that was caught on camera on the street view when I was searching came up on like every list. And it was a lady that appears to be giving a guy a hand job in an alley that the Google car drove down. And it's blurred, of course. So the pictures that were actually posted on Google Maps weren't blurred originally, apparently.
But the people aren't blurred in that picture, right?
They blur them on the website, but I'm pretty sure their faces. Here's the thing. The guy's face would have been completely recognizable had it not been blurred. The girl was facing the opposite direction, so you can't really see her just because of the positions they're in for this. So it was just kind of crazy. And it's blurred, so you're not 100% sure what's going on. Like, it could be them holding hands in joint prayer, but they probably wouldn't blur that if that was the case. And the guy's pants probably wouldn't be around his knees if that were the case. But after reading up on this, the particular act came from Temperance Street in Manchester, England. And while the photos have been taken down at this point, one photo showed both involved parties. It was like a close-up. There was like center framing. I was shocked how clear it was. That said, the next photo the car took, because like every time you click and you take a step further down, you could still see them in the distance.
Oh my God.
Still see this act happening. So the close-up photo got taken down as soon as it hit social media, and people were like, this dude's getting jerked off.
Oh my God.
And then the further away picture, they just took them because they were like in the distance and the wide shot angle, the good shot, and they blurred it. Like, so they blended into the wall.
Okay.
And it made me think how often I've been on Google Maps and seen blurry spots. Like,
have you tried to look?
I wonder what they hid. No, I didn't go to the Temperance Street to try and look because this is from like 8 years ago. So it's certainly not there because Google Images has updated a ton. But yeah, you never know why something's blurred on the street view. And that kind of got to me a little bit. I was like, that's a little bit weird. And I started looking more into this particular case, and more of the sites that I found had additional information. Some of them had the act completely like blocked out, like censored over both of the people so that you couldn't see like the original image with the blur over like the crotchal region. And
my God.
one of the sites I found said that over 5,000 images of sex workers have been found on Google Images. And if it says it on the internet, it's gotta be true. So I thought that was, and that's just people who have been captured either like negotiating or in the act of doing something where they had to get rid of the picture. And I'm just like, 5,000 is so fucking many. But anyways, that's my first one. So a little intro of something that I found kind of funny. My next one is actually going to move over to the sadder side of the interwebs. This one really surprised me because it didn't go in the direction I thought it would. The twist at the end isn't the obvious twist. So snap back to 2006. Y'all remember 2006, right?
I was still in high school.
Might be hard because somehow 2006 was 15 years ago. And when you hear that, holy shit, it makes me feel old. Quick recap. The Wii came out in 2006. The average cost of a gallon of gas was $3.18. The average new house in the United States cost $297,000. Steve Irwin died. Cars 1 came out, and the number one song in the Billboard charts for the year of 2006 was Bad Day.
What's Bad?
By Daniel Powter.
What is that?
Because you had a bad day.
Oh my... No.
Aside
okay.
from the Wii coming out in 2006, Jesus Christ, I do not miss 2006.
What?
Because, like, of all those things, the Wii was fucking sweet. That was such wonderful memories for me.
Cars 1 is sweet.
I don't think I've seen Cars 1.
Ka-chow.
I've seen it one time with you and Spooky Sis. And I'm just like, okay, cool. This is a fun movie. There's 2 more of these, though? Holy shit. Anyways.
And there's planes.
Oh, yeah. Planes, Disney Planes, Fire and Rescue. There's so many things. Anyways, on October 11th, in particular, 2006, a 72-year-old man named David Lee Niles was out for a drink with a friend. This was taking place in Michigan. I found the name of the town. I forgot to put in my script. I apologize. David actually had cancer. And in addition to this, he was struggling with depression. Aside from the discomfort and pain that he was feeling, he had suffered from depression for a lot of his adult life, from what I understand. In what is described as an abrupt exit, David basically gets up and departs the bar without saying goodbye to anyone. Most folks don't even notice his departure. They just notice that he's gone. And he was never seen again. A search for David ensues, but they just cannot find him. And eventually the case goes cold. After 3 years, his family has a funeral for him.
Oh,
they have no idea if he's actually dead or if he just disappeared or what happened to him at all. And in a very odd twist, it was not actually Google Maps that solves this case. On November 10th, 2015, 9 years, over 9 years after his disappearance, a man named Brian Houseman was in charge of decorating a Christmas tree for a local business. That local business was called Cook Funeral Home, which seems ironic and way too on the nose. While on a lift to decorate the top of this large tree outside, Brian notices something that seemed to be submerged in the water of a pond nearby. That water was typically murky, and it was that day, but it was just clear enough where you could actually see past the surface because this pond was not very deep. But on this particular day, Brian was able to tell there was a car in the pond. So he calls the police department, and when they come out, they remove the car from the pond, and sure enough, it was David Lee Niles' car, and he was still inside. He had been in that lake for over 9 years. The police stated they did not suspect foul play. The craziest thing about this is that the image of the pond, viewable on Google Maps, shows the car in the lake. And I'll be putting that on our Instagram, the car getting pulled out, and the fact that Google Maps at the time when they checked showed you could see the fucking car in the lake.
Yeah.
And it had been like that for years, literal years, since they started taking pictures of that pond. Mm-hmm. You have been able to see it for, I think I saw somewhere that it said for 6 years. Anyone who would have looked would have been like, there's a fucking car in that pond submerged. And no one looked. And so they waited over 9 years to find this guy, which is super sad. The family of David actually had that funeral for him in 2009. So when they found out 6 years after that, what had happened, or at least where he had gone, not exactly what happened, but recovered him, it brought them a lot of closure. And that's what they said to the media as well. You know, they had kind of accepted that he had probably passed away since it had been so long.
Oh, yeah.
But now to have remains that they could bury was something that wasn't like this horrible moment for them. It was like cathartic, where they can say, we finally have closure in a different way.
Yeah.
So the lead investigator on the matter said that they don't suspect foul play, but they're not 100% sure whether or not it was a suicide or something else could have happened, and that they'll likely never know. So that one is sad, but overall, at least something came of it, and there was evidence out there the whole time, and I think after this one too, people really started to realize you can find stuff on Google Maps that you kind of don't really think about could be there.
The thing is, people don't go out of their way to just scroll through every little piece of Google Maps. That's just doesn't happen.
What I think I do is like, I want to look at places that are these beautiful locations I want to see in real life. And then I look where I live now, where I've lived before. I try and find landmarks where I grew up, stuff like that, and just see what they look like, especially if the images have been updated. So I imagine if someone in that town was just like farting around and going around the roads and seeing places like that, you might have stumbled upon it. So something that happens a lot moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead and move into my next one. And this one is like weird and creepy, but probably not either at all, but maybe. So off the east coast of Australia is an island known as New Caledonia. It's a French territory and is just out there in the Pacific Ocean about 1,000 miles off the coast. It is not very big at all. The weird thing here is that Google Maps for a very long time showed another island just off the west coast of New Caledonia, even smaller. That island was known as Sandy Island. It was roughly the size of Manhattan. So why do I say was? Well, because it's not there anymore. The island itself showed up as black on Google Earth. Like when you're on the satellite imagery and you can sort of see the foliage and see how things look. There was an island there that looked like it was pitch black. Very, very creepy.
Do you think Google, the people that like did the satellite footage, Google was like, nope, we can't show this, black it out?
No, well, here's the thing. When folks saw what this looked like, they said we should probably go there. So anyone that was going to be in the area, researchers were told, go check this island out. It's about the size of Manhattan. Here's exactly where you can find it. So they decided that they would sail through there. And when they did, they found nothing but open water. There was no island there. So they decided it must be some sort of human error or what's called a pumice raft, which is debris basically that's blown off the floor of the ocean due to volcanic activity. And it's like this rocky debris that will float to the top. In some cases, it becomes so dense, you can walk on it. And like there's pictures of people in the open ocean where there's pumice rafts where they're just standing on this giant like sheet of rock that's essentially been kicked to the surface. It's like these large like rough pebbles that sort of like link together, and because their density and the salt water and something science, they can stand on it.
Something science, okay.
So they're like, maybe that's what it was and it went away, but they basically just said, just take it off the map. So to me, it's really weird because it still shows up on the satellite imagery. And they just decide that they're going to take it off the map. And I also think it's odd because it's not just the satellite images that picked it up. This was actually listed in the World Coastline Database, which is a completely different thing that exists free of like the satellites and the Google Maps as existing. Like cartographers had listed this as an actual island that existed with coastline for the last 100 years.
Weird.
They stated it exists. It's there. And now they're like, it's not there. There's nothing there. Open water. Don't bother going. It's not on the maps anymore. It's been completely taken off the maps. And it's just kind of odd to me. So it might just be that it's just not there, that they found some like pumice raft and it just eventually went away after it was filmed on like Google satellite images. But either way, it's just super creepy.
Weird, like research lab.
I think it's like Skull Island or the entrance to Cthulhu's tomb or some shit.
Ah, jeez.
So it's like there's no telling what it could be. But that one, when I was reading it, when I saw that it was actually on the coastline like database, I was like, that's fucking weird. And it's been there for 100 years. So for my next one, this is kind of true crime, but it's also hilarious.
Okay.
In Athens, Greece, apparently, you have to have a special permit if you want to build a swimming pool on your property.
All right.
And I don't know how much more special this permit is than the types that we have in the United States, where you have to do the same thing, like get your new structures permitted or whatever you're going to do. But the internet calls it special, so apparently it's special. What's interesting is that folks in Athens seem to hate getting permits about as much as folks here in the States. Officially, there were 324 pools listed as existing in the Athens suburbs. It seems low, but apparently the special permit is very expensive. It also increases your property taxes, so you have to pay taxes for the fact that you have a pool.
Yeah.
So Google Maps comes out, and it allows the government to officially and finally see into people's yards. And it turns out the count of 324 was low. It actually took them months to count the swimming pools that appeared on the map that were illegally built.
Imagine that you're scrolled out really far, right? And you're looking at this whole area, and you're like, this is a lot more blue.
It's like, this is a huge area, and this map has blue chicken pox. What the fuck is going on? The final tally of illegal pools in the Athens suburbs,
my God.
Not 324, 16,500.
Oh my God.
That is a lot of fucking liars over there. It is unimaginable. You figure the contractors would have gotten into trouble at some point too. I couldn't find any information about that because they built over 16,000 pools that didn't have the permit, which is just mind-boggling. They're like, whatever, we're going to put it in, but you're going to be in deep shit if they catch you. These people didn't all dig their own pools, obviously. It's not like those dudes you see on YouTube who make pools out of like sticks and mud.
That shit is impressive.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
But these people did get in trouble. The homeowners were in deep shit. The local government spent time to go after each one of them with basically an ultimatum of pay for the permit and the unpaid property taxes since this thing showed up, or you have to remove it. Also, if you choose not to do either, the price tag's going to keep going up until we have to take you to fucking court. So they actually made a ton of money off the fact that they could just use Google Images to see into people's backyards.
Where I work now, a lot of the answers that people have are just use Google Earth.
So sticking with the true crime side of things, I'll be heading over to the United Kingdom for this one. On June 5th of 2010, the Soanes family were going about their normal life. It was a husband, a wife, a daughter, and a son. A 13-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. The day seemed to be going forward in a standard fashion until someone noticed something odd around 2:30 p.m. Well, let me give you some quick backstory about the Soanes. They had what's called a caravan. In the States, we typically call this an RV, or some folks call it a camper. That caravan had actually been stolen months prior, and when it was stolen, whoever took it for a joyride, crashed it, completely destroyed it, and then abandoned it. The Soanes actually had a new caravan parked in their driveway that they had just purchased to replace the previous one. And they actually had this parked in their driveway at 9:30 a.m. That's the last time anyone could confirm they remembered seeing it. So between 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., it was stolen. At 2 p.m., they noticed it was gone. No one knew who took it or where they had gone. They reached out to the local police to report it. And I'm sure at this point, their insurance agent was like rolling their eyes like, ugh, again? You better start cutting me in if more caravans go missing.
Oh my God.
The police had no leads, but then the 11-year-old son named Ruben decided to look on Google Maps. And lo and behold, the Google Street View car had actually passed by that day. And not only had it passed by that day, it took a photo of the caravan. And you think, oh cool, they're going to narrow down the time window of when this is being stolen. Mm-hmm. No, it took a picture of a guy they didn't know in a car they didn't know parked in their driveway, getting out, adjusting himself like he's getting ready to steal a caravan, which he absolutely did. And his face was perfectly clear. And it was on Google Maps. You could go to it and see it. So they called the police. They said, hey, check out our address on Google Maps. And the police did. And they said, this is great. The only problem is the license plate is blurred out.
So you just contact Google.
You contact Google. You say, hey, this is a so-and-so officer from this place. Can you send us the unblurred photo so that we can go ahead and try and find this person? And Google made them wait. The article I read on this that had the most detail took place months after this was stolen, and the police have been waiting for months to hear from Google. The publication that was writing it actually reached out to Google for comment, and they replied stating that they could not comment on any specific case or photo, but that they do retain unblurred photos for a year and will cooperate with any police investigations that are ongoing. There was no comment on what was taking them so damn long to do it. In the end, it only took 2 years for the police to finally get the unblurred photo, locate the individual, and arrest him. In the meantime, the family completely gave up on caravans or RVs or campers or whatever you call them, since their luck obviously hadn't been too good, and they just decided they would buy a tent instead.
All right. Not as luxurious, but
There's like, okay, clearly we're not meant to have this. Let's just not buy another one. So moving on, among the really weird shit that you can find on Google Maps, there is one that has definitely rocked me to my core. Like, it's going to stick with me probably for the rest of my life. Okay. So is it the park that happens to have roads that are in the shape of a 5-pointed inverted star surrounded by a circle carved into the landscape of an isolated part of Kazakhstan? where if you look at it on Google Maps, it's just an upside down pentagram. No, not really. I mean, it's just an inverted pentagram. That could be for lots of stuff. Even if it is 1,200 feet in diameter, it's a pretty big pentagram. Is it the abandoned launch sites you can find all over the world, especially in the United States? Almost 300 separate military sites supposedly abandoned, some of which at one point were known to hold nuclear warheads that are just in land that's basically abandoned.
All right.
No, not really. I'm sure they're not in disrepair or anything and are being looked after properly. No, I'm actually the most affected by a land formation in Darfur, which is in the Sudan. These lists I've seen on this thing refer to the location as landlocked lips.
They're landlocked lips, all right.
Because from the picture, it certainly appears to resemble human lips.
Mm-hmm.
The only issue I have is that the image doesn't conjure thought of standard lips. I sent it to Robin for her take on it, and her reply was exactly what I thought when I saw it. And I'll let you read my next bullet point.
It looked like a vagina.
It absolutely looks like a vagina. An interesting follow-up on this one in particular, the image that is circulated in all these lists that show this bizarre land formation from space, it shows this barren desert area where these lips are appearing, and it certainly looks like a sandgina. But I found the coordinates on a different website, and I went to check it out, what it looks like now. And there's actually quite a bit of green there now with foliage and trees, and obviously when you're looking at something from a satellite, the trees look like dots.
Yeah.
So it definitely has changed the appearance of what this looks like from the satellite. So, I mean, it still looks like a vagina, but it looks like a green one covered in dots now. I'm just like, okay, well, I'll never unsee this, but there's so much bizarre shit on Google Maps, so I'm really glad that 911 Girl suggested this, and I cannot wait to hear what Robin has to cover, because that is it for me and strange Google Earth. So I hope you enjoyed those. We're going to get to Robin's, but we're going to take a quick commercial break.
All right, welcome to the other half of the episode and my little tidbitties about Google Earth.
You have bigger tidbitties than I have.
I did focus more on each thing that I did because one of them I found really interesting. The other was there's just a lot that led up to the Google Earth being part of the whole thing. Okay, so first thing I'm going to cover today is the disappearance of a man named William Earl Moult. And on November 7th, 1997, Moult was 40 years old at the time he disappeared from Lantana, Florida. Don't know if that's how you pronounce the name, but that's how I read it. Police had no leads as to where he could have gone. The only thing they knew was that he was last seen leaving a nightclub, according to a report from the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. He had called his girlfriend around 9:30 p.m. to tell her that he was on his way home. He was driving back to Lantana, and he never made it back home. In the missing persons report, it was stated that he was a quiet person and didn't really drink very often at all. But that night, he had had a few drinks at the bar. He didn't look drunk when he left that club, but it's thought that that may have something to do with his disappearance. Why, you may ask? Well, 22 years after his disappearance, in 2019, a housing development manager was scrolling through his new development area when he noticed what looked like a car submerged in the pond in the 3700 block of Moon Bay Circle in the Grand Isles housing development.
I would recommend for anyone who ever likes to get on Google Earth, just check the bodies of water around where you live and just see if there's any bizarre things under the surface.
So this is in Wellington, Florida, which is about 30 minutes away from Lantana. A drone was flown over that area to confirm that they were indeed seeing a white car in that pond. The sheriff's office was then called on August 28th, 2019. When authorities arrived, they pulled the car out of the water, noting that the car was, quote, heavily calcified and was obviously in the water for a significant amount of time, end quote. Upon inspection of the car, they found some skeletal remains inside. And medical examiners and authorities were able to determine that the remains were those of Molt. I'm sure they matched,
dental records
with the car. I'm sure they could still read the license plate maybe or something that. I mean, it was over 20 years, so who knows how damaged any of that stuff was.
Don't all the engine parts have the VIN number on it too, or specific engine parts to the
car? But if it's been in water for over 20 years, do you think... I would
at
imagine
least one of them might have survived.
Maybe. I just imagine rust would fuck everything up, where you can't just read anything anymore.
It would fuck most things up for sure. I'm just wondering if there's anything... I'm wondering if car manufacturers are like, let's make sure and put the VIN on something that will not decay in the water, like plastic.
Yeah, but would the water eat away at... this is Florida.
If it would, then there wouldn't be an island of plastic the size of the United States and the fucking Pacific
Think about
Ocean.
it. Well, no, our water, sources of water and things like that, our wastewater is full of microplastics that are really bad for the environment.
Like those stupid tiny beads they used to put in soaps, all the time. Those just go through filters, don't they? That's a different topic.
Okay. Anyway, so with the hurricanes and stuff in Florida, I imagine this car got beat a lot. But I don't know how they actually figured out it was him. Probably from dental records, you're right. But who knows? It was over 20 years that this skeleton was in this car underwater. Apparently, the car was visible on Google Earth since 2007.
Holy shit, that's so much longer than mine.
But no one really paid attention to the area until 2019. The pond existed in 1997 because the area was actually under development during 1997, that time when he went missing. It's impossible to know exactly what happened to him, but it's assumed that the drinks had something to do with him ending up in that pond. It's really interesting to me, and the fact that was literally available on Google Maps for so long. Or
imagine how many mysteries could be solved on Google Maps. That's what I've kind of learned from this, is there's so much information that's apparently just there if you just know where to look.
Yeah, it's scary. All right, so to follow that sad discovery up, next is something that is a little mix of depressing and charming, which is strange.
Is this the one you show me pictures of?
Yeah.
You should probably include terrifying.
How's that terrifying? I don't think
when
it's
you
terrifying.
describe this, I'll tell you why I think it's terrifying.
All right, so how can you mix depressing and charming, you ask?
Hello, I'm right here.
Oh, God. That's me, though, at work. Everyone's always like, oh, you're so nice. And then sometimes they're like, you say so one thing depressing. And
it's like, you're so dark. It's like, you don't know what I'm really like.
But there's a story of the village of Nagoro in the southern valleys of Shikoku, Japan. And Google Earth has photos of this small village where life-size dolls have kind of taken over. It's a town where, quote, people and scarecrows live together in harmony.
It is terrifying because it's like you want to look around on Google Maps, and if you go to Street View, you can see these things.
Yeah, and they're everywhere. That's the creepy... I think they're not necessarily creepy because I think they're actually really cute. But this whole town is filled with these life-size dolls. In this village that once toted a population of about 300 people, now exists less than 30 people.
Jesus Christ.
With that number dwindling as time goes on. I think each year it's like 2 or 3 people less.
Isn't there more people living in Centralia?
I don't know, actually. I don't remember.
Can you confirm these people aren't actually being turned into life-size dolls?
They are not. Not that I know of, anyway. So, to make up for the village becoming more and more empty, one of the village's residents, Ayano Tsukimi, creates these life-size plush dolls and places them all over. She began making them around 2003, I think, to combat the loneliness that she felt upon returning to this village after spending so much of her life in Osaka. And the first time she ever made one, she made it in the likeness of her dad. As she was in her garden, she was planting seeds, the birds kept digging them up, so she's like, I need to make a scarecrow, so she made one that looked like her dad. He did not die, he was still alive. She just made one that looked like him.
Okay.
So neighbors kept walking by and kept trying to talk to him in the garden, but it was just the Scarecrow.
I will say that detail has not convinced me that people aren't being turned into these things. I feel like she created the shell. Now all she has to do is move his soul in there.
God, shut up. So she put the Scarecrow in her field. And scarecrows apparently are called Kakashi.
That's interesting.
Yes. So anime knowledge nugget for everyone here that watches anime and the rest of you probably don't give a fuck. But Kakashi Hatake, right? You know Kakashi from Naruto.
Right.
If you don't remember him, he's the one that kind of taught like Sasuke and Naruto and Sakura, that group.
He hides one of his eyes.
Yes. And his name translates, Kakashi means scarecrow, and Hatake means farmland or field. So his name literally means scarecrow of the farmland. I was like, what?
More like badass of the farmland.
So now you know. I thought it was really fun for me as an anime nerd. Anyway, before you lose interest, after she made her first one, her neighbors were really amused by it because they would come by and think that her dad was working in the field, but obviously he wasn't, right? So she was having...
your dad's been working really hard. He's been out there for like 7 straight days.
She decided to create more in the likenesses of her different family members, and it kind of grew from there. So now there's over 350 of these dolls around the village, which is incredibly impressive. She creates them whenever neighbors leave, or like they move to a city to find work, or they pass away. She creates them using fabric and straw, stuffing their legs with newspaper, shaping things with wire, stuff like that, and then dresses them in old clothes. So people actually donate clothes from all over Japan, or she gets them from secondhand stores, stuff like that.
So she doesn't use the clothes from the actual people then?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I'm telling you, they're not like people that she's turned into them. Okay?
I just feel there's like 2 or 3 steps more, like dress them in their clothes, get a lock of hair, maybe a dab of blood, say a few words, and then all of a sudden they are the Scarecrow.
So the school that closed in this village in 2012 is now filled with a few dozen of these dolls that she's created. So they're dressed as students, they're dressed as teachers, and they're all like propped, you know, so it looks like they're in class.
This is like some I Am Legend shit at this point.
And then she's made those that look like they're working in fields. There's some that are placed by the river that look like they're fishing. There's even those that look like they're riding a bike with helmets and everything. She also creates some that are based on famous people around Japan and even famous people around the world. In 2020, the village was featured in an episode of James May, our man in Japan. Yes, the James May from Top Gear.
Nice.
And in that episode, he actually has a doll made in his likeness. So there's a doll out there that looks like James May.
Goes missing, we all know what it looks like.
I hope he doesn't. He's funny. Then, of course, she does take creative liberties and makes dolls, like, from her imagination, you know? And each one that she creates has its own background and its own story. Each one is unique. She really focuses on facial expressions and how to make them, like, it's crazy how talented she is in making these because she gives them ages. Like, you can tell the age of one, you know, if it's supposed to look like an older lady or a kid or something like that. It's really impressive.
And we'll put a picture, we'll put multiple pictures probably of them on our Instagram because they don't just look like the Scarecrow that I identify, where it's like a burlap sack with a button sewn to it for an eye.
They're really cute.
They look like dolls. Like,
right,
they don't just
like
look like scarecrows. They're terrifying.
There are many visitors that have come to the village and say it's creepy. Like Adam thinks it's really creepy. This village is filled with dolls, right? And it's probably from the fact that the village is populated by dolls. It's eerily quiet. And there are still people that look like they're doing everyday tasks throughout the village. Some visitors say that they've had to do double takes, thinking that they saw someone that was living, but it was actually a doll.
You know why? Because the doll moved, that's why.
Shut up. There are dolls that look like they're doing repair work on the town. There are just so many of these dolls all over.
Some of them look like they're smiling at you, and then you look away and look back, and they're not smiling anymore, and you're like, what is happening right now?
Her village is not the only one that's like this. It's probably the only one that's filled with dolls like this, but there are towns and villages all over Japan that are dwindling in population as the younger generation chooses to live in metropolitan areas. And there's no school here, right? So once the younger kids had finished like elementary school, middle school, they go to bigger towns, cities, to go to high school and stuff like that, and to go get jobs. There's really no job opportunities in a small village like this. And these villages in rural mountain areas are dwindling in population at a rapid pace. And it probably doesn't help that since 2010, the country's population as a whole has dropped about 1.4 million people.
Wow.
The birth rate in Japan is so low, and about 20% of the country's population is over 65. Side note, in America, 16.5% of our population is over 65, and only 22% is under 18. Our birth rate is 12% as of 2021, whereas Japan's is only 7%.
Wow.
So their birth rate is really low. As the elderly die, there's really no one to move into these areas. So villages like these just get abandoned.
We were talking about the fact that there are places in Japan, and it's very difficult for someone who does not live in Japan, is not someone who's like
to buy a house,
a citizen
or
of
like
Japan.
that.
Yeah, but there's houses in the middle of nowhere, basically, that are like abandoned and run down, and the government can sell them to you for very cheap with the expectation that you are going to fix them and live in them.
Yeah.
And I remember saying like, I'm going to buy 6 of these fucking things and move to Japan. But yeah, even if I did that, I don't think I would even be allowed to buy one.
Yeah, you can't.
But yeah, like hearing this, that totally makes sense why these things are out there and exist.
Yep. And
now they're probably filled with fucking dolls.
The last children born in this particular village were born 20 years ago. That's how long ago the last children were born in this village. That is nuts. In Nagoro, not even a local grocery store exists. You have to drive an hour and a half to the grocery store.
Wow.
The impact of this drop in population has on society and the economy is just staggering. Like the fact that no one can make a living there, you know what I mean? That there used to be shops, there used to be like pachinko parlors, which is like a casino kind of sort of thing.
Right.
They don't exist there anymore because they can't. There's no way to support it when there's no one there to go. Right. According to Tsukimi, these dolls kind of bring back memories of her friends and remind her of good times, which is why she keeps making them. She's been making them for over a decade, obviously, since, she started in 2003. She does have to switch out dolls every so often because the ones that are out in the elements only last for about 2 or 3 years before she has to make another one, like a new one.
Especially if they break down when they come to life and chase people out of the town.
Shut up. She is now 69.
Wow, nice.
Nice. But she is now one of the youngest residents of this village as well. Her father, 92, is the oldest resident.
Wow.
And it's her history with the village is really interesting because I think she moved away when she was 12, and then her dad moved back to take care of his father-in-law, and then he went back with his wife, and so he was there when his wife was dying as well, and then she moved back after living in Osaka and came to take care of her dad. So it's kind of like generations just going back to take care of the previous generation, so it's really interesting. The Google Earth images that you can see are both incredibly cute, but knowing why they're there just kind of makes me sad because just knowing that village is filled with dolls because there's no one to live in it. But that being said, as of 2021, Tsukimi is still there. She still creates these dolls. Because of the things that she's done, because of all these dolls that she's created, the village actually gets many visitors now. So she keeps up with it and makes sure they all have nice clothes on, stuff like that. She even hosts doll making worships. No.
That sounds right. Yep.
She even hosts doll making workshops. She even gets custom orders from all over Japan.
Does she host them in Kazakhstan on the countryside?
No. There was a doctor whose wife actually died of cancer, so he asked her for 2 replica dolls of his wife.
Aww.
One for his living room and one for his bedroom.
That's so sad.
It's very creepy and cute. It's very sweet, but don't do that for me. Don't request for a replica doll of me when I die.
Too late.
She herself has a replica of her grandmother in her passenger seat of her car. Because she has to drive an hour and a half to the store. And she keeps her with her so she's never lonely in the car.
Aww.
It's really sweet. The dolls even have their own festival on the first Sunday of October. So if you're looking for something to do and you live in Japan, check out this little village. It seems really cute. People say that when they do visit and they get to meet her, she's so excited to show people around and tell them about all the different stuff that she does. Dolls in the village may outnumber people 10-1, but I think it'd be a really interesting experience to go check it out. If you can't see the village in person because you're not allowed to enter the country like a lot of us, you can take a virtual tour through Nagoro's main street via Google Earth and see all the amazing dolls that you can see from the main street yourself.
Do it with the lights off at 3 a.m.
What? No. I mean, the lights are going to be on in the picture.
Yeah, but not in your room when the doll appears behind you.
One thing I saw someone say that really made me sad was, quote, "If these were real humans, this would truly be a happy place," end quote. I was so sad. I was like,
That is something sad, but I think the company of dolls might be preferable to the company of most human beings, to be honest with you.
Wow. I'm going to buy you all the dolls.
Humans are kind of awful.
I'll buy you a bunch of dolls.
No, I don't want dolls either.
So you're welcome. This has been both depressing and heartwarming, which seems to be my forte.
Nice.
So
good work.
Yeah, I just thought that it was really interesting and more educational, I guess, because I really, really like, I don't know, learning all these different things about places all over the world, right? That you don't really think about declining populations and stuff like that. I didn't even realize that our birth rate has dropped from like the 80s from like 16 down to 12 because this generation is really not having a lot of kids, right?
I mean, a lot of them are like, I'll have them when I'm older because I can't afford them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's I think it's really interesting because the approach I took was kind of like quick hitters. Like, I'm going to go and do 5 or 6 of these like little mini topics. And then you really like went on an adventure with your Google Map stuff where it's like, especially your last part of your topic.
Going on Google Earth is an adventure.
You could like walk through this town and be like, why am I surrounded by dolls?
But I could take a vacation, right? I could just be like, oh, you know what? I can't actually travel to fucking London, but I can go on Google Earth and click through the streets. I can and see all these different shops and stuff like that. I might not be able to actually go inside them, but it's cool to just see all these different places.
I had a guy on my team back when I worked at Tesla who his last 5 to 10 minutes of the day, he would call traveling, and he would go onto Google Maps and he would just go to like the most beautiful places on Earth and like just like put himself down on the map wherever he could and just see like the most beautiful views and be like, one day I'm going to go here and one day I'm going to go here. And it's like, it'd be really cool if you actually did that. So,
aw,
it's a pretty cool thing. And I will say, I think that
thanks, Google, hire us.
Yeah, good job, Google. These things are certainly creepier than I anticipated them being. And I mean, we didn't even touch on any of the odd land formations aside from the Sangina, because there's some really weird shit out there. But either way, I think this was a solid topic. So shout out again to 911 Girl for suggesting
it was a good one.
I enjoyed it.
I've never thought of doing it before. So.
It never popped in my brain, not once. So, all right. Pretty good stuff. That has been episode 197 of Scaryish. If you folks
to 200.
Getting close, yeah. If you folks have any stories that you would like to share with us, they don't have to be Google Earth related. They could be if you want them to. They can be supernatural, paranormal, creepy, coincidental, alien, extraterrestrial, true crime in nature. Feel free to reach out to us and say, hey, here's my story. Feel free to read it on the podcast. Or, hey, here's a story of one of my friends or family members. We would love to hear from you. You can email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. Fill out that form. It comes directly to us. You can also hit us up on our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/Scaryish podcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1.
Using that Kathleen Turner voice on the
Who's Kathleen
outro.
Turner?
It's one, she's like this like famous actress. Two, it was a joke from the show you watched while you were writing your script.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, at $1 you get ad-free episodes, which you really can't go wrong with there, right? And if you're not into the monthly tier type donation thing, you can also go to coffee, ko-fi.com/Scaryish podcast. Those are one-time donations, and all your donations go to helping us upgrade our studio setup, and anything you do helps. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening, sharing us with your family and friends, and just keeping with us, keeping Scaryish.
Indeed. And we really appreciate it. We do. We say it a lot, and it's because we really, really do. I don't want it to become white noise or people to think it's not genuine. We sincerely appreciate all of your support. It really does mean the world to us. So I do think that's everything we have, though, for episode 197. So, Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.